Your next great investment idea might already be inside your refrigerator, charging beside your bed, or hanging from the arms of 5 people on your morning commute. Wall Street has algorithms, analysts, and billions of dollars worth of data. But you have something those systems often struggle to understand: context. An algorithm can detect that sales are increasing. You may be able to see why customers keep coming back, why they tolerate another price increase, and why a product is quietly becoming part of everyday life. That was the foundation of Peter Lynch's famous approach. He looked for investment ideas in shopping centers, restaurants, workplaces, and conversations with ordinary consumers. But here is the part people usually leave out. Lynch did not buy a stock simply because a store was crowded. Everyday observation produced the lead. Financial research determined whether it deserved his money. In this video, I'll give you a 5-part framework for turning normal shopping behavior into a disciplined investment watch list. And stay until the 4th filter, because that is where most exciting consumer stock ideas completely fall apart. Peter Lynch managed Fidelity's Magellan Fund from 1977 until 1990. During that period, the fund reportedly produced an average annual return of roughly 29%, while its assets grew from about $18 million to approximately $14 billion. Lynch also popularized the term 10-bagger, an investment that rises to 10 times its original value. But his real lesson was not buy whatever you use. It was use what you know to identify where you might possess an informational or behavioral edge. Then investigate the company as seriously as a professional would. Lynch's investing framework included different categories of businesses: fast growers, stalwarts, cyclicals, turnarounds, slow growers, and asset plays. The method changed depending on which type of company he was evaluating. So let's correct the popular misunderstanding. Using a product does not mean you understand its stock. You might love the product while the company loses money on every sale. You might see a packed store while the business is drowning in debt. You might discover an excellent company after its stock price already assumes 20 years of flawless growth. The shopping trip is not the investment thesis. It is the beginning of the investigation. It would be misleading to claim that an individual investor has more data than Wall Street in 2026. Professional investors can purchase credit card data, online search trends, satellite imagery, app download statistics, and real-time estimates of store traffic. Your advantage is not necessarily speed. It is interpretation. You can notice that the same water bottle has appeared at your office, your gym, and your child's school. You can notice that a restaurant is still full after raising prices twice. You can notice that customers are not simply trying a product. They are reorganizing part of their daily routine around it. I call this street-level alpha. Street-level alpha is the gap between what a spreadsheet records and what a real customer understands. An earnings report may show rising revenue. A customer may know whether that revenue comes from genuine loyalty, heavy discounting, a temporary viral trend, or an experience people genuinely consider irreplaceable. Physical and digital retail have also become deeply connected. Customers may discover products through creators or online communities, research them through an app, and complete the purchase in a physical store. Modern retailers increasingly use stores as community, service, and brand engagement spaces rather than merely transactional locations. But one sighting proves nothing. One crowded location could reflect a grand opening. One sold-out product could reflect poor inventory planning. One viral post could create demand that disappears within a month. You are looking for a repeated pattern across different locations, customer groups, and periods of time. The first practical filter is the high-velocity product test. It has 3 visual signals. Signal 1. Repeated visibility. Do not ask whether you saw the product once. Ask whether you are seeing it repeatedly without deliberately searching for it. Are different age groups using it? Is it appearing in several cities? Are competing retailers increasing the amount of shelf space devoted to it? Are people buying replacement products, accessories, or refills? A temporary trend creates attention. A potential long-term business creates repeated behavior. Signal 2. Expanding breadth. A niche product begins with one loyal audience. A mass market product starts crossing boundaries. It moves from enthusiasts to ordinary customers. It moves from one product into a broader category. It moves from a specialist store into mainstream distribution. The most important question is not, is this popular? It is the total addressable customer base still expanding? Signal 3. Price resilience. I call this the checkout friction test. Checkout friction is the resistance customers display when the price rises. Do they put the product back, wait for a sale, move to a cheaper competitor, or continue buying at full price? When customers repeatedly absorb price increases without abandoning the product, that may indicate pricing power. But you must distinguish genuine pricing power from inflation, shortages, or temporary scarcity. The proof eventually needs to appear in the financial statements through stable demand and healthy margins, not merely a long checkout line. Now we reach the first major failure point. A product can be brilliant and still belong to a terrible business. Imagine a local restaurant with lines around the block. That may look like an obvious opportunity. But what created the success? Was it one exceptional founder? One perfect location? One chef who cannot be replicated? One landlord offering unusually cheap rent? To become a multibagger, a company usually needs a repeatable growth engine. The second major filter is the ecosystem and cult loyalty test. In the digital physical retail model, a customer relationship may involve the product, an app, subscriptions, accessories, loyalty rewards, community events, and online content. This can create powerful retention, but only when the ecosystem provides genuine value. Look for what I call irreplaceable utility. Does the product solve a repeated problem? Has it become part of the customer's daily or weekly routine? Would switching to another product create inconvenience? Does the customer buy because the product is useful, or because social media temporarily made it fashionable? A durable habit is more valuable than a viral moment. But cult loyalty can also become a trap for investors. People may love a brand while the company spends more than it earns to maintain that enthusiasm. Online engagement can look impressive, while customer acquisition costs quietly rise. A loyalty program may increase repeat purchases, but destroy margins through constant promotions. Now we leave the shopping center and open the company's filings. Public companies disclose detailed information through annual reports, quarterly reports, and, in the United States, filings such as the 10K and 10Q. These documents contain financial statements, business risks, debt obligations, share counts, and management's discussion of the company's performance. Here is a simplified 6-number Lynch-style filter. Number 1. Revenue growth. Is demand increasing consistently? One extraordinary quarter may result from a product launch, acquisition, or temporary shortage. Look for several years of progress and determine whether growth is organic. Number 2. Earnings growth. Revenue without earnings can be acceptable during an early expansion phase. But eventually, a business must demonstrate that growth creates economic value rather than larger losses. Number 3. Gross margin. Gross margin shows how much revenue remains after the direct cost of the product. Stable or rising gross margins may indicate pricing power, operational efficiency, or a strong product mix. Falling margins may reveal discounting, higher costs, or intensifying competition. Number 4. Operating cash flow. Accounting profits are useful, but cash reveals whether the core business is actually funding itself. A cash flow statement shows how money enters and leaves the company through operating, investing, and financing activities. Number 5. Cash versus debt. Fast growth becomes far more fragile when it depends on large amounts of expensive borrowing. Compare cash with total debt, then look at whether operating earnings comfortably cover interest costs. Number 6. The share count. A company can increase total earnings while repeatedly issuing new shares. When that happens, each existing shareholder owns a smaller percentage of the business. Check diluted shares outstanding over several years. Is management funding growth through customer-generated cash or through a continuous supply of new shareholder money? After discovering a promising business, many investors make their biggest mistake. They buy immediately. Discovery creates excitement. Excitement creates urgency. Urgency convinces the investor that any price is acceptable. Instead, build a valuation range. Estimate what earnings might reasonably look like in 3 to 5 years. Use conservative, normal, and optimistic scenarios. Then ask what valuation the market is already demanding. If the current price requires the optimistic scenario merely to produce an average return, you do not have a margin of safety. Add the business to a watch list. Set the valuation at which the expected return becomes attractive. Then wait. Finding a company early does not require buying its stock early. Patience is part of the advantage. A potential multibagger is not a lottery ticket you purchase and forget. Use a buy and verify strategy. Every quarter, return to the original thesis. Are the stores still busy without excessive promotions? Is shelf space increasing or shrinking? Are new locations performing well? Is inventory moving or building up? Are customers paying full price? Are revenue, margins, and cash flow supporting what you observe? This creates a feedback loop between the real world and the financial statements.